Hello, my name is Kelly Knapp,
And I'm Amy Ackley.
and we are graduate students with Northwest Nazarene University, and we are in the Masters of Education in Curriculum and Instruction program. Today we will present information to you on an educational curriculum giant. The curriculum giant we will present today is named Hilda Taba. Hilda Taba lived from 1902 to 1967. This presentation is designed for pre-service and current teachers to help understand the historical impact of Hilda Taba's beliefs and philosophy on the current practices of today's educational system. The objectives for today's presentation are to discuss the historical framework around the life and teachings of Hilda Taba, to review the 3 skills of inductive reasoning and the Taba approach, and to understand Taba's impact on current practice in education. Hilda Taba was born on December 7th, 1902 in Kuraste, a small village in southeastern Estonia. She was the oldest of 9 children. Taba had education in her blood, as her father was the schoolmaster of the local elementary school. Taba attended her father's school and then went on to graduate high school. After high school, she decided to study and take the examination to be an elementary school teacher, just like her father. She passed the test. However, Taba wanted to study at a university instead. So in 1921, she began official university studies at the University of Tartu. She studied economics, history, and philosophy, which helped shape her future works on progressive education. While at university, she began to supplement her family's income by tutoring school children. This was the beginning of her educational experience. Taba graduated university in 1926 and then received a grant from the Rockefeller Foundation to study education in the United States. During her postgraduate and doctoral work, Taba studied the works of Boyd H. Bode, E. L. Thorndike, and William H. Kilpatrick. But the person to most heavily influence Taba's educational philosophy was John Dewey. Taba studied the works of Dewey and attended many of his lectures. His beliefs in social interaction and school as a social institution and pillar of democracy were critical in the formation of Taba's personal philosophy. Also, Dewey believed that education is a portal to societal reform, and this belief also transferred over to Taba's future writings and research projects. Taba began to write, educate teachers, and do research on education. She worked closely with Ralph Tyler and a number of other notable educational giants. By the mid-1940s, Taba was widely recognized in the educational community of the United States. World War II was a significant historical piece to Taba's research as the end of the war brought a population redistribution. After the war, there was a large number of rural workers migrating to the cities, and the city population became much more diverse. There were many violent riots in large cities, the most notable in Detroit in 1944. Taba began to study ways to educate the population on tolerance. From 1945 to 1951, Taba focused one of her largest research projects on intergroup education. The extensive study looked into the socio-psychological causes of intergroup tension. The culmination of this study produced a school curricula designed to ease these tensions among students. From today's perspective, intergroup education laid the foundation for the intercultural and multicultural education. In 1951, Taba began her work on the reorganization and development of social studies curricula in California. It was in this work that many of Taba's lasting impacts on curriculum were developed, such as concept development or formation, inductive teaching strategies, and using the 4 distinct categories of objectives. Unfortunately, Taba did not have the chance to continue more research in the field of education. She died unexpectedly in 1967. It is important to note that although Taba became a well-known name in the world of North American educational research, She did not gain any recognition in Estonia until many years after her death. Her ideas and philosophies were not approved nor supported by the Soviet regime, which held control of Estonia for much of Taba's life. It was not until the late 1980s and early 1990s that her native country became aware of the important impact she had on the field of education.
Taba's work in education. Taba's overarching belief that helped shape her educational concept was the belief that thinking can be taught by engaging students in practice, more specifically, the practice of inductive reasoning. Because of this belief, Taba went on to identify 3 inductive thinking skills, the first being concept formation, the second, interpretation of data, and the third, application of principles. In this first skill, concept formation, there are 3 major areas. These 3 areas state that students should be expected to identify and list items or concepts, group according to common attributes, then categorize and label their findings. The second inductive thinking skill, interpretation of data, the student expectation should include interpreting, inferring, and making generalizations. Students will identify critical relationships, explore relationships such as cause and effect, and make inferences about their findings. In application of principles, students will put their thinking to work by predicting consequences, explaining and supporting their predictions, and testing those generalizations. Another contribution to curriculum development was unveiled when she published her book, Curriculum Development, Theory and Practice, in 1962. In this book, she lays out her thoughts on what would be known as the Taba approach. In this approach, she maintains there should be a definite order in curriculum creation. She was also very clear in whom she believed should be at the heart of this process: teachers. She believed that curriculum development should be created by those who teach it. For this reason, Taba's approach was quickly nicknamed the grassroots approach. This approach included 7 different steps to curriculum development. The first, diagnosis of need. The teacher, who is also the curriculum designer, will decide who the curriculum is for and identify the needs of those students. In the next step, formulation of objectives, the educator will formulate and specify the specific objectives to be addressed. That takes us to the third step, selection of content. The targets or objectives should influence the subject matter or content. There should be validity, significance, and relevance in the content chosen. In organization of content, teachers are responsible for organizing the content to be presented. A scope and sequence needs to be established that takes into consideration the achievement, developmental stage, and interest of your learners. Content must be engaging. That's why in this 5th step, selection of learning experiences, it is important that the teacher selects instructional methods that involve your learner with content presented. Once we have organized our learning experiences, it is time for organization of our learning activities. With the knowledge of the students in mind, it is vital that the activities planned are thoughtful, sequenced, and organized. The last and final step is evaluation and means of evaluation. The educator now has to decide if their goals were met and design an assessment to evaluate their initial learning outcomes. How is Taba's approach still reflected in teaching today? Hilda Taba described curriculum as a plan for learning. She stated that objectives establish a sense of purpose and provide a basis for deciding what to include, exclude, or emphasize. In developing a curriculum, she goes on to say that curriculum must suit the needs, interest, and maturity of the students, all the while using the most up-to-date knowledge available, reflecting only the essential, basic knowledge that can have wider, more integrated application. As we look at the issues such as Common Core and restructuring our curriculum, Hilda Taba's philosophies are very much reflected in our educational environment of today. As we add in the needs of unit planning, backwards design, objectives, essential and non-essential curriculum, the integration of technology and different subject matters, all hot topics of today, we can tie directly back to Taba's approach for curriculum development. Our takeaways? There are many fads in education. Things will come and go. But whether it be 1962 or 2014, what is good for students and at the heart of good teaching will always be good for students and at the heart of good teaching. So, is Taba's approach and philosophies still relevant for us today? Absolutely yes.